Hello Deadheads, this is Chris and this is going to be a Walking Dead season finale special edition. Yeah, I like the sound of that. We'll call it a special edition. First of all, let me apologize. I wasn't able to get to the second half of the season as far as weekly breakdown and reviews, but I've been so busy with the Game of Thrones Season 6 hype, collaborations, work, all that real life stuff, etc. I just couldn't get to it, but I did want to do this quick little video on the finale and really get down to the nitty gritty of who it was. Was it any, mini, mighty, or mo? Let's jump right in. There will be spoilers. I'm going to be talking about the comic books as well, but I want to jump right in and try to break down and figure out who it was in this one hell of a cliffhanger finale we saw on The Walking Dead last night and get down to who we think's leaving the show for good. So there were two major things going on last night in the finale. One was the Carol storyline. I won't get into that right here because she's been on this story arc about not wanting to kill, kind of following Morgan, and their little storylines this season. It's all nonsense. Basically, the show's trying to show us that, you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't. But the way they've been portraying it and Carol all of a sudden wanting to leave just doesn't make sense to me. She's been a stone cold badass for this entire series ever since she lost her daughter. She saved this group a million times, and all of a sudden now she just wants to leave because she doesn't want to kill anymore. And then, of course, Morgan has to actually kill somebody to save her, and he tries to justify his whole not wanting to kill people thing by saying, for example, if he would have killed that wolf when he should have, then Denise wouldn't have been there to save Carl when he got his eye shot a couple episodes back. But that's all bullshit, because if you killed the wolf when you were supposed to, then she would have never gotten kidnapped by the wolf and she would have been there to help Carl anyway. I guess the point being is you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't. So I can understand that to a degree, but it did spare her and Morgan the wrath of Negan. So let's get right to it. The other half of this episode is basically Rick and them trying to get Maggie to the hospital because she had these pains, possibly a miscarriage last episode, and they were trying to get her to the hilltop to a doctor since our beloved Denise got an arrow through the eye. So they all pile in the RV and they go on a road trip and try to get to the hilltop, but every road they take is roadblocked by saviors, and instead of just mowing them down and going through them, they decided to keep backing up and trying different routes, and eventually they ran out of options. So Eugene decided to self-sacrifice and take off in the RV alone and allow the rest of the crew to carry Maggie on a stretcher on foot to try to get to the hilltop to fool the saviors. Long story short, it didn't work. They got busted anyway. They got caught. You heard the whistling in the woods as they were walking, and they all got brought to the central location, apparently some campsite in the middle of the woods somewhere, and they all got lined up just like in the comic books. Now, I will say that Glenn is the one who dies in the comics. Everybody thinks it's Glenn, obviously, because they did follow the comics pretty closely this year, more than in years past, but I don't think it's Glenn, and it's based off one thing: the actual cinematography of the show. So I did rewind a million times and do the Zapruder film thing, and first off, let's go over the lineup of how our characters were lined up kneeling in front of Negan. So from Negan's perspective, when he was introduced, which I thought was a pretty badass introduction, by the way, I really like Jeffrey Dean Morgan. He's a hell of a damn character, and it's going to be interesting to see what makes him tick. But from his perspective, facing our group kneeling on the ground, from Negan's left to right, it was Glenn, Rosita, Daryl, Michonne, Abraham, Maggie, Rick. Then you had Sasha, Aaron.
Aaron. Where is Aaron right now?
Carl, and Eugene. Now, I know a lot of speculation has been going on the last few months about it's going to be either Daryl or it's going to be Glenn, because Glenn is the one who dies in the comics when he meets Lucille, and Daryl has this other show coming out, but it is a short documentary type show, I think, or a miniseries, so that doesn't really mean anything, and there's no real reason to kill Daryl right here just for straight up shock value, because he just got shot in the last episode, and you heard Dwayne say, "You'll be okay," so that tells me it's probably not Daryl. There'd be a huge backlash if they killed Daryl, although that's ballsy, and I would respect that, but there would be a huge backlash because apparently Daryl is the heartthrob of the series. And now let me get to why I don't think it's Glenn. If you look at the actual cinematography when Negan went through his Any, Mini, Mighty, Mo game, and yes, I did go through the entire thing, Any, Mini, Mighty, Mo, and try to figure out exactly who he landed on, saying "you are it," but that doesn't work out. He kind of cheated. He started skipping around when he started with Rick at Any, Mini, Mighty, Mo, and ended up on Michonne, and then he started skipping around where he pointed down to Glenn, ended up back on Daryl for Tiger, and of course they started showing the first person point of view shots when he got towards the end where he was going to pick somebody, so that doesn't work out. There's no way you can figure out who he picked based off the Any, Mini, Mighty, Mo game. But if you look again at the cinematography, when he was at the end and picked "You Are It," he was on the right side from his perspective of Rick. From Rick's perspective, Negan would have been walking to his left because there was a shadow that passed right over the left side of Rick's face going in that direction, so whoever he picked was on the left side of Rick or to Negan's right. And that narrows it down to Sasha, Aaron, Carl, and Eugene. Now, we can immediately eliminate Rick and Carl themselves because he did say when he picked somebody, if anybody moves, poke out the boy's other eye and feed it to his father. So he was not standing in front of Carl, and it was not standing in front of Rick. You saw the shadow pass across Rick's face. So that leaves Sasha, Aaron, and Eugene. And I think we can probably go ahead and eliminate Sasha because even in the comics, Negan doesn't necessarily batter or beat or kill women. Matter of fact, I believe he's actually killed somebody in the comics for trying to rape a woman. So I think we can eliminate Sasha just based off the character in the comics. So that leaves Aaron and Eugene. Now, Aaron, if you think about Aaron in the context of the entire group, he really doesn't belong there. He's not part of the original cast. So it would fit that Aaron would be killed off because he's not really that big of a player. He has been tied into Maggie the last few episodes as far as her storyline because he feels like he owes her one, and that was why he was on this trip in the first place. People wouldn't like it because he is a likable guy. He is a member of the group now, but at the same time, it doesn't provide that shock value. So let's move on to our last candidate, Eugene. Now, Eugene basically has been on this storyline for the last few episodes, matter of fact, this whole season, where he's kind of come up as a character. He's starting to actually contribute and not just be a dumbass with a mullet. And if you think about this episode, what happened before they even took off on this adventure as far as going through the woods where he's separated from them, he basically self-sacrificed. He decided he would drive off on the RV to kind of fool the saviors and they would walk through the woods so they could get Maggie to the doctor. Didn't work out, but he tried in the first place. And right under our noses, he said all his goodbyes. He said goodbye to Rick. He said goodbye to Maggie as she was carried out. She said thank you. He had this great moment with Abraham where basically he said, you know what, you are a survivor. We just didn't know it. Thanks for all you do. I love you, brother. All that kind of shit, and had this good little moment where they hugged and said their goodbyes. And then think about the fact that he handed to Rick the actual plans on how to make Ammunition 101. So if he handed that to Rick, and he even told Rick, Abraham knows the location, here's how to do it. If I die, go handle it. If they're going to follow through on the show about that storyline where Rick eventually learns how to make ammunition and start manufacturing it in this location, Abraham is the only one who knows where it is. So for me, they wouldn't put that in there if they weren't going to follow through with that, and that kind of eliminates Abraham, and he was on the right side of Rick anyway from his perspective. So if you think about the fact that Eugene has become really a tight-knit member of the group, he stepped up his game, he's dropped his cowardly side, and kind of being his own man, came up with the idea in the first place, and then self-sacrificed, and literally said his goodbyes to everybody thinking he was going to die anyway. And interestingly enough, if you look at this picture here, when he's about to swing, this looks to be Carl's shadow with a cowboy hat on. Now, it's hard to say how this would actually work since the light source was behind Negan's right shoulder, but if you look here, this looks to be an outline of a cowboy hat. It could be the contour of his coat and all that kind of stuff, but this may be a hint that he was standing right beside Carl, and of course that is either Aaron or Eugene. Now, it still could be Aaron. There's really no reason to keep Aaron around right now, but at the same time, I don't think it provides that shock value, even though Eugene certainly wouldn't provide the shock value of a Daryl or a Rick or a Glenn for that matter. I'm going to guess based off that elimination and the cinematography alone, based off the shadow that passes across Rick's face, that this was probably Eugene. He is part of the main group, unlike Aaron, and it wouldn't be too much of a loss for the group, but at the same time, you've come to like Eugene a lot better in the last few months, and I think it would provide enough shock value and a little bit of a distraction and difference from the comics so everybody wouldn't know who the hell it was in the first place. Based off of that alone, I think it's Eugene. I think he's who bit the dust and met Lucille. Let me know in the comments below if there's anything I missed, but I did narrow this down based off the cinematography, and if it ends up being somebody on Rick's right or Negan's left, they just basically screwed that up. So let me know what you think. You got more Game of Thrones stuff coming. Val and I from McCall's Geek will be recording our Game of Thrones Season 6 predictions on Danny and John coming up real soon. Be on the lookout for that. In the meantime, you can click here on the last video I did on the Game of Thrones March Madness teaser breakdown, and you can also click here on the last video I did on the behind the scenes Game of Thrones footage, and a lot of speculation there on what the White Walkers will be up to this season and who they may actually attack. So check those out. Let me know what you think. Thanks for all the support, you guys. Be sure to subscribe to get everything. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.